Welcome to the Deep Dive. So you send in your sources, and we're here to dig through them, pull out the really interesting bits, the important insights.
Yeah, think of it as getting you up to speed fast.
Exactly. And today, we're diving right into some pretty incredible cricket comeback stories.
That's right. Our listeners shared some great material looking at, I think it's five specific players who faced, well, potentially career-ending challenges.
And these weren't small things, were they? We're talking, controversial statements causing uproar.
Big time.
Massive performance slumps, career-threatening injuries, even a worldwide scandal that really shook the sport.
Huge. So the big question we're tackling is, what makes the difference? Why do some cricketers manage to claw their way back from these huge setbacks while others just fade?
It's fascinating. We'll be looking at things like psychological strength, the support they get, and, well, just their basic character, right?
Absolutely. And our sources suggest a useful way to think about this sort of psychological path. The crisis moment, then the wilderness period, and finally, the redemptive return.
Okay, let's break that down. The crisis moment. That's the big bang.
Pretty much. It's the event itself, the injury, the scandal, whatever it is, and the pressure, both external, like, media storms,
right,
and internal, like battling self-doubt. It's immense. There's even a stat, something like 87% of athletes report serious depression symptoms after a major public controversy.
Wow, 87%. That's huge. It really shows the mental hit they take.
Definitely.
So after the crisis, they hit the wilderness period. What happens there?
Well, that's where the hard yards are done, usually out of the limelight.
Yeah.
It's not just about fixing the body, though that's often part of it. It's fundamentally rebuilding their mental game, their whole psychological approach.
This is where things can go wrong.
Yeah, this is often the make or break phase. The grind, the uncertainty. It's tough. A lot of comeback attempts fizzle out here.
Okay, and if they get through that, they reach the redemptive return, which is more than just playing well again.
Exactly. It's not just about the runs or wickets. It's about changing the story, controlling the narrative around them. They need to perform, yes, but also sort of rewrite their public image from player defined by failure to player defined by resilience.
Right, reclaiming that narrative. Okay, this framework is really helpful. Let's apply it. Hardik Pandya, his crisis was very, very public.
Oh, absolutely. That Coffee with Karan episode in early 2019, it blew up. The comments were labeled misogynistic, huge backlash.
And the consequences were immediate.
Yep. Suspension from the BCCI, sponsors bailed, social media went nuts. It was a massive pile-on.
That must have been incredibly isolating. Our sources mention he really withdrew.
He did. Reports say he basically didn't leave his room for a while. A real personal crisis. And to make things worse, his father had a heart attack around that time, which Pandya apparently felt immense guilt about. The pressure was just enormous.
So how did he get through that wilderness?
A lot of it was psychological. He worked with a mental conditioning coach, Shyam Kothari. Big focus on self-reflection, looking beyond just Hardik the cricketer.
Finding identity outside the game.
Exactly. He said something like he had to see himself as a human being first. It's about detaching your self-worth from just your job, especially when that job is under threat.
And did that change how he approached cricket itself?
Seems like it. People used to say his preparation could be a bit inconsistent. But Virat Kohli mentioned after his return, Pandya became maniacally disciplined. That's a big shift.
Coming back must have been tough, though, facing the crowds.
Yeah, it wasn't smooth sailing. He got booed quite a bit initially. I remember reading about one specific IPL match in Mumbai where the crowd really gave it to him.
Ouch.
But, he showed flashes of composure, delivered crucial spells under pressure.
And eventually won them over, leading to that 2022 T20 World Cup performance.
That seemed to be the turning point. His all-round game, especially under pressure at the end of matches, was critical for India. And yeah, the same crowds booing him earlier were chanting his name. It was quite the turnaround.
There was a psychologist mentioned, Dr. Cohen.
Dr. Janki Cohen, yeah. She made a great point. It wasn't just getting back to the old Pandya. He'd evolved, created a more mature persona. More evolution than just restoration.
Okay, let's switch to another huge one, the sandpaper scandal. Smith and Warner. That crisis was seismic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
2018 South Africa, ball tampering, captain and vice captain involved. The shockwaves went everywhere.
The fallout was massive. Bans, contracts lost, endorsements gone. Even the prime minister condemned them.
It was brutal. You remember those press conferences? Smith breaking down, Warner looking shell-shocked. It felt huge.
And their wilderness periods look quite different from the outside.
Yeah, really different. Smith seemed to just vanish, went totally private. Apparently, he couldn't even watch cricket for a while.
Really? Wow.
Whereas Warner, he stayed involved, but at a different level. Played grade cricket, coached kids, kept his hand in,
It shows there's no single right way to handle it, I suppose.
Exactly. Depends on the person, their support network, everything.
And how they prepared privately also differed.
Yeah. Smith apparently locked himself away, worked intensely on his technique, lots of net sessions with his dad, almost like a technical deep dive to regain control, maybe?
Could be a way to focus.
While Warner worked more with coaches, like Justin Langer, refining things. Less about reinvention, more about polish, perhaps.
Then they returned for the 2019 World Cup in England and the reception.
Predictably hostile. Lots and lots of booing from the English crowds.
How did they handle that?
Seemed differently. Smith looked like he was internalizing it, maybe using it as fuel, but you could see the strain. Warner put up more of a reserve front, maybe trying to block it out.
Smith's big redemption moment seemed to come pretty quickly in the Ashes, right after that World Cup.
Oh, that 2019 Ashes series was unbelievable for him, averaging 110. Even after missing a test with concussion, that performance silenced a lot of critics, earned grudging respect even.
But for Warner, it felt like it took a bit longer to fully turn the narrative around.
Yeah, perhaps you could argue his ultimate redemption moment was being player of the tournament when Australia won the T20 World Cup in 2021.
Right.
Mark Taylor, former Aussie captain, had a good take on it. He said they both came back as better cricketers, but different men. Smith may be more comfortable in his own skin, Warner more aware of his impact, his responsibilities.
Okay, so we've had scandal, but comebacks aren't always about that. Shane Watson and Gautam Gambhir faced different battles. Watson's was injuries, right? Constant injury.
Relentless. The sources mentioned 11 distinct injuries between 2008 and 2011 alone. Stress fractures, hamstring tears, just one thing after another. People genuinely questioned if his body could handle international cricket.
That must be incredibly mentally taxing. Always rehabbing, never quite feeling part of the team fully.
Exactly. He talked about that feeling of isolation, being in limbo. You're not fully out, but you're not really in either. It's a tough place mentally.
So what changed for him? How did he break that cycle?
It seems he had to fundamentally rethink his game. He was seen as a batting all-rounder, but he worked with a biomechanics expert, Mark Portis, to completely rebuild his bowling action.
Sacrificing pace for durability.
Essentially, yeah. Making it more repeatable, less stressful on his body. It was a major technical reimagining.
And it worked.
Big time. He came back strong, culminating in being player of the tournament at the 2012 T20 World Cup. And interestingly, his stats actually improved after the comeback. Better strike rate, tighter bowling economy.
Wow, so changing his technique actually made him better overall.
It seems so. It highlights that sometimes adaptation is better than just trying to get back to exactly how you were.
Okay, Gambhir. His challenge was different again. Not injury, not scandal, but being pushed out.
Yeah, it's complex. He played that amazing knock, 97, in the 2011 World Cup final, a key part of the win. But afterwards, he found himself increasingly on the outer fringes of the national team.
Officially because of form.
That was the line, but there were persistent whispers, suggestions of, let's say, strained relationships, particularly with the captain MS Dhoni.
That kind of situation, being sidelined when you feel you should be playing, must be a unique kind of wilderness. No clear injury to fix, no specific band to serve.
Exactly. It's almost an existential challenge. You're a top performer, but suddenly you're surplus to requirements. There's no clear roadmap back.
So what did he do? How did he respond?
He channeled his energy very strategically. He didn't just focus on getting back into Team India. He poured his intensity into captaining the Kolkata Knight Riders in the IPL.
And had great success there.
Huge success. Led them to 2 IPL titles. Really stamped his authority with a very distinct, intense, tactically sharp leadership style.
So his comeback wasn't necessarily returning to the Indian team, but proving his worth and finding influence in a different arena.
Precisely. And that continued after playing. His move into coaching, mentorship, taking on these big strategic roles, it shows comebacks can open totally new doors. Watson and Gambhir really show resilience isn't just about overcoming the big, obvious crises.
These stories are powerful individually, but listening to them, you definitely start seeing common threads, don't you?
Absolutely. When you zoom out, like our sources did, some clear patterns emerge across these comebacks, and others too.
Okay, like what's the first pattern?
The first one is definitely this idea of redefining identity. We saw with Pandya looking beyond being just a cricketer, Warner maybe becoming more aware of his role. Yuvraj Singh is another example mentioned, having to rebuild his identity after cancer.
Right. A sports psychologist, Dr. Richardson, was mentioned.
Dr. Emma Richardson, yeah. She talks about how athletes often face an identity crisis when things go wrong. And a successful comeback usually involves building a more nuanced, resilient sense of self, not just, I'm a cricketer.
Makes sense. What else?
Then there's technical reimagination. We saw that clearly with Watson rebuilding his bowling action, Smith tweaking his batting technique after the ban. Mohammad Shami adjusting his wrist position is another example cited. It's about evolving, not just restoring.
Okay, identity technique. What's number 3?
Social recalibration. This is huge, especially after controversy. It's about rebuilding trust with teammates, fans, the board, everyone.
Like Pandya winning the crowd back, or Warner maybe being more careful about his public image?
Exactly. It involves taking responsibility, showing you've learned, but without letting the past completely define you. You have to reintegrate into that team environment.
And the fourth pattern?
Narrative control. This is about actively shaping the story of your comeback.
What do you mean?
Well, think about Smith's narrative becoming about his incredible dedication to practice. Pandya's about his newfound discipline. Yuvraj is about inspiration over adversity.
Yeah.
The players themselves, consciously or not, help write that comeback story.
Right, they influence how people see their journey. Fascinating. Beyond these big patterns, are there specific psychological skills that are vital?
Definitely. One key thing mentioned is managing the mental load or the baggage of the past. You can't perform well if you're constantly replaying the failure or worrying about the reaction.
How do they do that?
Research from places like the Australian Institute of Sport points to mental load management. Techniques like compartmentalization, putting the past aside to focus purely on the next ball, or using trigger words to snap yourself into the present moment. A mental skills coach, Kate Howie, talked about this.
Like building a mental firewall.
Sort of, yeah. And interestingly, neuroscience is starting to back this up. fMRI scans show successful comeback athletes often have enhanced activity in their prefrontal cortex.
Which is the brain's control center.
Exactly. Controls emotions, focus, decision-making. It suggests that the mental training involved in a comeback can physically strengthen these brain areas. One neuroscientist, Dr. Rajiv Mehta, even compared it to building a mental muscle for blocking out distractions.
Wow, so the brain actually changes. And these skills, this resilience, it doesn't just stay on the cricket field, does it?
Not at all. Look at Gambhir moving into politics, using that strategic mind. Warner navigating social media, Yuvraj setting up his Uweekend Foundation. The skills are transferable.
And the support systems are getting better too.
Yes, there's much more awareness now. Teams have returned to play specialists. Australia has formal reintegration protocols. It's becoming more professionalized. Recognized it takes a whole support structure.
So stepping back, these aren't just cricket tales. They tell us a lot about resilience, full stop.
Absolutely. Key lessons jump out. First, careers and life aren't linear. Expect ups and downs, like Warner's W-shaped journey or Yuvraj's huge interruption.
And the importance of having people around you.
Crucial. Support systems. Smith's dad, Pandya's coach, Yuvraj's family, they're vital. Also, adversity can actually force you to grow, develop new strengths. Gambhir's leadership, Watson's adaptation.
And that idea of rewriting the story.
The power of rewriting limiting narratives. Yuvraj refused to be just the guy who had cancer. It's about taking control back.
As fans, knowing this stuff definitely changes how you watch them play, doesn't it?
For sure. You appreciate the journey, not just the sixes and wickets. And if you play yourself, even casually, there are things to learn adapting like Watson, handling pressure like Warner, building back fitness like Yuvraj.
And these lessons apply way beyond cricket too.
Totally. Public failures aren't usually fatal. Reinvention is possible, but it takes accepting what happened and looking forward. Resilience isn't just bouncing back, it's bouncing forward, growing.
Some great quotes in the sources too from legends.
Yeah, Kim Hughes saying cricket is like life, it's about how you respond to getting out. And Sunil Gavaskar noting that cricket teaches you about failure, but comebacks teach you how to rebuild.
So why do we love these stories so much?
I think fundamentally they give us hope. They show that even after hitting rock bottom, growth and success are possible. Shane Watson apparently said his proudest moments weren't his trophies, but his comebacks. Finding a way back when it seemed impossible. That's powerful stuff.
It really is. So the final thought for you listening, maybe it's this. In cricket, And maybe in life too, sometimes the most important innings you play is the one that comes right after your biggest setback.